Good morning, friends. Last time we were left facing the harrowing news that each and every person is facing death and judgment from God, and we could only wonder if that's the end of the story. Well, of course, we're in such a helpless state that the only way forward would be outside intervention coming from God himself. And despite the fact that we're the ones in the wrong against him, gloriously, he does exactly that. And that's exactly what he did when he sent his son, Jesus Christ, into the world because of his love for us. He sent Jesus into the world to die in our place. Now, if we were explaining to someone what the heart of the Christian message is, I'm sure we'd all want to get to Jesus pretty quickly. But what would we say about him? God's love for the world is certainly shown by him simply giving his one and only son into the world. And perhaps also his example is to us shown by his perfect love. His perfect life lived in this world is good too. And those two things are vital. But remember, our big problem isn't that we weren't loved. It's not even that we don't have a good enough example to know how to live rightly. Our big problem, remember, is that we are so set in our rebellion against God's good rule that he rightly punishes us for our sins. So if Jesus is going to help us at all, he has to help us with that punishment. He has to undo God's sentence against us. And that's exactly what he did do when he died on the cross. So when we're speaking about the Christian message, then of course the cross must be central. But sadly, I have seen and heard many times when Christians talk about Jesus and explaining the gospel, but maybe miss out the cross altogether, or the very best maybe mention it, but don't make it central. But the cross is what deals with our big problem, so the cross must be central, as it is in the Bible. You can see here in our verse for today, Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. There, in a nutshell, is what Jesus did for us. Yes, it's vital that he lived a righteous life so that he could do something about us and our unrighteousness. But what he did as a righteous person was to die for sins, for all of us in our sinful state, so that all of us could then come to God. You see, because of his great love and generosity, God, who of course is still on the throne, that never changes, God is still on the throne. And he did not leave us to suffer the consequences of our rebellion, which he could have done by rights. Rather, he did something to save us. He sent his own son, divine son, into our world to become a man, Jesus of Nazareth. And draw a J there, just to remind us that that's Jesus, not us. And unlike us, Jesus didn't rebel against God. he lived the perfect life. He always lived under God's rule. He always did what God said. So he didn't deserve death and punishment like we did. But Jesus did face the punishment of death. Although he had the power of God to heal the sick, to walk on water, and even raise the dead, Jesus allowed himself to be executed on a cross. That's a cross. So why did he do that? Well, of course, Jesus came not just to live in isolation, but he came into our world. The Bible tells the incredible news that Jesus died as a substitute for people like us, everyone else who lives in this world that God made. The debt that we owe to God, Jesus paid by dying in our place on the cross. He took the full force of God's justice on himself so that forgiveness and pardon might be available for us all. That's wonderful news, isn't it? And all of this is quite undeserved by us. It's a generous gift from start to finish, an incredible truth in and of itself. But the wonderful news is there's more to come. So please do tune in on Monday morning to find out more. Why not use the weekend to practice the boxes that we've learned so far with someone?